WhiskyCast. Brought to you by Redbreast. The definitive single pot still Irish whiskey. Those in the know Redbreast.
Brian Kinsman became the master blender for William Grant & Sons in 2009 after his mentor, the longtime master blender David Stewart, eased into semi-retirement. While Stewart still handles the Balvenie single malts, Kinsman is responsible for the rest of the company's growing portfolio and has taken a greater role in blending the Tullamore D.E.W Irish whiskies since the Tullamore Distillery opened in 2014. With an eye to that brand's long-term future.
First of all, tell me about the conversation you had a few years ago with David Stewart when he said, I'm stepping back, I'm just going to worry about the Balvenie, the rest of it's your portfolio. Tell me what that conversation was like.
It was quite a long time ago now, but I guess it was a absolute pleasure working with David, and David made the whole thing very easy. In terms of right from the day one. So I probably first really got truly involved back in maybe 2001, so your best part of 15 years ago with David, although I'd been in the company for a while before that. And it was such a gradual thing. It was done over a long period of time with a very, very natural handover that actually the point when David did step back was probably the most natural thing in the world because we'd built up to it over a long number of years. So. It wasn't almost a moment in time, it was a very long period of time.
What's it been like trying to set your own mark on these brands? Because you're not only responsible for Glenfiddich, but the entire Grant's range. You've also got responsibility now here at Tullamore D.E.W. And you also do some work with the Gibson's folks in Canada from time to time. Yeah,
so it's a big remit because ultimately we're looking after all spirits for the William Grant portfolio. I think the key thing is there. It's almost not about me stamping my own thing onto the brands. The brands are the brands, and I'm now the custodian of the quality of those brands. Now, clearly, when it comes to things like innovation, you're trying to come up with new stuff, and that's an interesting part. But even that's got to be within the context of that brand. So all those years working with David on, let's say, Glenfiddich or Grant's, it's about understanding the DNA, understanding what's Glenfiddich all about. What's Grant's all about, therefore what do we operate within, how do we protect that history while looking to do new things in the future. So I think a big part of it is actually taking yourself out of it and actually focusing entirely on the brand and saying I'm just trying to manage and look after the quality of this for the future.
One of the things I've noticed is that you tend to work across all the brands within a company. Other major whiskey companies have dedicated blenders for each of their ranges. Does that give you more flexibility or at least broaden your horizons when you're able to work with Irish and Canadian whiskies as well as Scotches?
Yes, and that's probably a function of scale originally. So William Grant came from being a very small company. Admittedly, we are now, I'd say, we're definitely a medium-sized company. And while I maybe pop up a lot and I do manage the portfolio, we've got a good team looking after different things, and that's definitely something over the coming years we'll be trying to introduce more of them into doing things like this, chatting to yourself, presenting the brands, talking about them, sort of leading that side of it. And I think other companies have done it because they're naturally on a bigger scale or on a different sort of outlook, and that's something we'll morph towards probably over a period of time.
The room we're standing in right now is going to be the eventual blending lab
Yep.
here at Tullamore.
Yep.
Tell me about the innovation here, because you've just come out in the last couple of months with the 14-year-old single malt and now the 18-year-old single malt. And this is the first real new release that's going to be a global release under your tenure as master blender. Tell me about the innovation that went into these, because the cask range on the finishes was a bit unusual for Tullamore.
Yes, so I mean we're trying to use almost like we've got 120 odd years experience of making Scotch whisky, and as you said, all these other kind of world products that we look after. So we're trying to take a lot of that knowledge, bring it to Tullamore, but inherently keep it Irish whiskey, keep it Tullamore. So it's back to that whole thing of what is the DNA of the brand. So for these particular single malts, what we're looking at is what's the influence of different cask types. So we've got 4 cask finish on both the 14 and the 18. Each cask type brings its own unique flavour profile, but at the centre of it, and when people try the product, it's still inherently Irish whiskey. It's still recognisably a single malt from Ireland, and I think that's key. You know, it's the cask finish. What we bring into it, all the innovation part shouldn't be the hero. That's, you know, almost like shining a light on the whiskey, which is already great whiskey. And then when we think of the distillery, we're in a great place because we've got a brand new facility. We're innovating a lot. Our aim will be to fill that pipeline full of interesting whiskies, interesting products that will be here long after I'm here and long after most of the people who work here are here, where we just fill the warehouses full of genuinely new and, you know, exciting flavours.
One of the things you just came out with earlier this spring was the El Sabé single malt from the single malt distillery at Girvan.
Yep.
That was unusual because it used some Tuttletown casks that were the little small ones that they were using for some of their bourbons and ryes. What did that bring to that whiskey?
It brings you a totally different relationship between spirit and wood in terms of the ratio. So in a really simple term, it gives you accelerated aging, but it's not just that. You've got way more oak to spirit in terms of surface area. We also experimented a little bit with, do you cask finish or do you cask start? And cask start's not anything anybody really talks about, but almost like the catchphrase of it would be born in baby bourbon. So ideally you take that new spirit from the still, and it's got all its kind of rough edges that you would expect a new spirit, and you put it into a baby bourbon cask, an ex-Hudson cask, and you really blast it with maturation early on. You don't want to do that too long because it actually then starts to dominate the whiskey. You then take that out and let it then mellow in traditional oak casks for a while. So we've almost taken some of the thought processes of maturation and flipped them on their head and said, let's do all the hard labour up front and then let the whiskey mellow after that.
Is that a traditional practice though? Does that meet the rules?
It meets the rules because the casks are completely, so you could mature it for as long as you want in a Hudson cask. It's a quarter cask, it's a completely normal cask. The only bit we're doing differently is we're almost taking what you might consider to be a finishing cask, potentially, because you're going to talk about it, and we're getting some of the power of that cask earlier on in the process at the start when the whiskey's first made.
You mentioned a few minutes ago that you're laying down whiskies now for your successors to follow.
Yeah.
David identified you as his successor early on. Have you started looking at who might replace you in a few years?
Yes, and now I know how David felt. It's important. It's really important to do that. It's also important because we're growing as a company. So we're lucky. We've got lots and lots of talented people in the business, and the way we're doing it is not so much picking out one or two people. It's actually getting lots of people involved, taking that whole knowledge base, growing it, getting graduates in, getting experienced people in at the different locations, and trying to really nurture talent, because it doesn't really matter what they end up doing. It doesn't matter if they do my job or somebody else's job. If they grow their knowledge base on what we're trying to do, what whiskey's all about, then that's better for the company as a whole anyway. So it's trying to take the model that David and I kind of almost put together and just grow it out into be something bigger and better that will be good for us in the longer term.
What do you want to be known for when you finally do retire?
Doing a good job. Simple as that. I don't really want to be known for. I don't really want to be known for doing anything spectacular. I want to be known for the fact that we make great whiskey, and people see our brands, recognise them, recognise that they're reliable. Hopefully, recognise that they're interesting and worth looking out for new expressions because they're going to challenge a little bit. But ultimately, it's that balance of the whiskey's going to way outlast me, and it's going to way outlast all of our generation and the next generation and the generation after that. So we have to just keep building that sort of foundation. It sounds a bit corny, but it's that, that's what it's about. It's about making sure that we just look after what we've got for the long term.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
In Tullamore, Ireland, I'm Mark Gillespie.